I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I figured they were just stories people told when they wanted to feel like the dead were still hanging around, like the scent of tobacco on an old jacket long after the smoker's gone. But what happened to me last October made me question everything I thought I knew. It all started with a racing game. Not just any racing game, this was Road Kings 4, Legacy Circuit, a brutal, high-speed simulator with physics so real you could feel the G-force when your car hugged a turn. I'd picked it up to blow off steam after work, just another digital distraction in a life that had become more about surviving than living. My name's Jack. I'm 38, a mechanic by trade, and kind of a loner by design. Grew up in a small town in Iowa, where the only thing louder than the gossip was the sound of engines revving down on Miller's track. My old man, Gary, he was a legend back then. Folks still talk about the '79 Fall Nationals, where he took a beat-up Mustang with a busted carburetor and smoked half the state's top racers. He died when I was 16, heart attack. Dropped right in the middle of tuning his Harley. We weren't close. Never got that father-son bond people dream about. He was more wrench than words, and I was too much of a dreamer for his liking. After he passed, I boxed up all his trophies, his racing jackets, even the Polaroids of him grinning with grease on his cheeks, and shoved them into the attic. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself I'd never be like him. But the weird thing about time is, it softens the edges. Turns resentment into curiosity. I bought Road Kings 4 on a Friday night. It was raining like hell outside, and I had a half-empty bottle of rye on the coffee table. Just wanted to burn a few hours. I created a profile, JackRacer88, and jumped into the career mode. There's this mode called Legacy Trials, where you race against AI versions of legendary players, ghost drivers, they call them. It's meant to be nostalgic. Some of the names are fictional, but a few. Real racers who died. Creepy stuff if you stop to think about it. The first few matches were normal. I was driving a souped-up '98 Dodge Viper, tearing through neon-lit tracks set in cities that didn't exist in real life, places with names like Midnight Swerve and Crimson Valley. Then I saw the name. G. Matheson. It stopped me cold. The game said the Ghost AI was modeled after real-life telemetry data. The system would mimic racing styles, habits, even decisions in critical turns. And Gary Matheson? That was my father's full name. I thought maybe it was a coincidence. It had to be, right? Still, curiosity got the better of me. I clicked Start Race. The track loaded. Dust Devil Speedway. A desert course. Dry, sun-bleached asphalt, abandoned gas stations in the background, vultures circling in the sky. It looked exactly like Miller's track. Not kinda. Not sorta. Exactly. Same layout. Same turn radius on Deadman's Curve. Same cracked billboard that read, "You break, you die." I sat back, goosebumps rippling over my arms. This wasn't just a racing game anymore. Then his car pulled up next to mine at the starting line. An old '67 Mustang Fastback, painted cobalt blue with white rally stripes. I knew that car. Knew it like the back of my hand. It was the same one my dad drove the night he won the Fall Nationals. The engine sound wasn't canned. It was raw, guttural, like the real thing. I know because I used to sit on the hood and listen to him rev it, just to feel the thunder rumble through my chest. And the license plate? Ghost 67. I should have paused. Should have backed out. But I didn't. 3, 2, 1. Go. The cars tore down the track. My heart pounded like I was 16 again, sneaking out with my buddy Travis to steal beer and race his brother's Camry on the backroads. But this was different. This race had gravity. The ghost driver was good. Too good. He didn't take corners like the AI. He anticipated my moves. Blocked me when I tried to pass. Cut inside just enough to send my car into a wobble. He was playing me. And then it happened. Midway through lap 2, I spun out on the gravel curve, classic rookie mistake. Smoke filled the screen. My hands hovered above the controller, and I muttered, "Damn it, Dad, you always did know how to bait a trap." Then the ghost car slowed down. Not just a brake. It slowed. Pulled over. Waited for me. I didn't even think the AI could do that. As I caught up, the Mustang gunned it again. We were nose to tail all the way to the final lap, and as we hit the home stretch, I swear to God, I heard a voice crackle through my headphones. Static, barely audible. "Hold the outside. Don't oversteer." My jaw dropped. It was his voice. Raspy, low, unmistakable. The same voice that used to bark at me when I was 10 and spilled oil on the garage floor. I lost the race by 1/10 of a second. When the screen faded to black, I sat there in silence. The game asked if I wanted to rematch. My fingers trembled over the buttons. Instead, I quit to the main menu. My heart was racing faster than any car in that game. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by dust-covered trophies I'd pulled down from the attic, my father's old leather gloves resting in my lap. The game shouldn't have known about him. No one should have known. But I knew. That wasn't just some AI. That was him. Somehow, someway, my old man had found a way back. In a goddamn racing game. I didn't turn on the console the next day. Didn't want to. Hell, I couldn't. I kept telling myself it was a glitch. A one-off. Some audio file triggered by mistake, maybe. Something left over from a tribute mode. But that voice, that gravel in it. The way he said, "Don't oversteer," like he was standing over my shoulder in the garage again, it wasn't fake. I kept busy. I changed the oil in the shop's fleet van. Fixed up an old Pontiac Firebird that came in sputtering and left purring. I even stayed late to clean the spark plug racks, something I hadn't done in months. Just so I wouldn't go home. But when I did finally walk through the front door of my little one-story house on Dawson Street, the damn controller was sitting right on the couch cushion, exactly where I'd left it. Waiting. Like it knew. I cracked a beer, took one long pull, and sat down. Booted up Road Kings 4. This time, the game didn't ask if I wanted to race Gary Matheson. It just loaded the track. Dust Devil Speedway. Again. But there was something new this time. At the top of the screen, in that boxy retro font, it read. Legacy Driver Challenge, unlocked. Below that, a description. Race the spirit of the driver you couldn't beat in life. Unlock memories, reveal truth. This is not a game anymore. I dropped the beer. No one I ever talked to mentioned anything like this in the game. I scoured forums later, Reddit threads, Twitter posts, nothing. This mode didn't exist for anyone else. But for me, it did. I clicked Start. The world pixel faded to black and rebuilt itself in color. Only it wasn't Dust Devil this time. It was our garage. Not in-game, not stylized. Our garage. From back in Iowa. Down to the cracked linoleum under the workbench and the little oil stain that looked like Elvis's profile near the jack stand. The Mustang was parked dead center, hood up. My old man was leaning over the engine bay, wrench in hand, sleeves rolled up, same battered flannel shirt he always wore. He wasn't translucent or ghostly. He wasn't some glowing blue hologram. He looked solid. Real. Alive. I didn't have control of my character anymore. The camera just drifted forward like it was on a dolly track, slow and steady. I couldn't move, couldn't press buttons. Just watch. He looked up. And for the first time in over 20 years, my father looked me in the eye. "'Bout time you showed up," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "You've been dodging this garage since the day I died. I don't care how tough you think you are. I don't care if you wrestle gators in the bayou or parachute into war zones. Hearing your dead father call you out like that through a video game. It knocks the wind out of you." "Wasn't ready," I muttered aloud. "Stupid thing to say, maybe, but it's what came out." He nodded. Like he understood. Neither was I. Then the screen flickered. When it came back, we were back on the track. Only this time, the track wasn't a fantasy course. It was Miller's track. The real one. The cornfields. The rusted chain-link fence. The old announcer's booth that had collapsed sometime in '05. All of it rendered in perfect, jaw-dropping detail. And there was the Mustang. Blue and white. Sitting at the start line. I was back in my Viper. This time, there was no countdown. No music. Just a soft wind rustling through digital corn, and the low thrum of two idling engines. The race started when I hit the gas. He kept up with me on the straights, but I noticed something. Every time we hit a turn, every time I hesitated, he slowed just a little. Not to let me win, but to challenge me. To teach me. He'd always said the best racers weren't the fastest, they were the ones who learned from the track itself. I started leaning into it. Remembering his lessons. Braking before the curve, not inside it. Keeping the car wide on the apex, trusting the grip. My Viper started dancing through those bends like it had wings. And all the while, the Mustang stayed right beside me. Then, on the final lap, he did something strange. He swerved, just slightly, on the back straightaway. Enough for me to pass. He was giving me the win. I nearly lifted off the throttle, but that same voice, the one I hadn't heard since I was a kid, sitting cross-legged in his shop, came through my headset. "Don't hold back for me, Jack. I ain't the one stuck in reverse." And just like that, it hit me. This wasn't about the race. It never was. This was about closure. I floored it. Crossed the finish line ahead of him. For the first time ever. The screen didn't go dark. Instead, it slowed. Cinematic, almost. The cars stopped side by side. My digital driver looked over, and my old man was there in the Mustang, grinning like it was 1979 again. He gave me a salute. 2 fingers to his temple. Then the car faded. Dissolved into dust. The Mustang. The man. The track. Gone. All that was left on the screen were 5 words. "You finally beat me, son." And then the console shut itself off. I sat in the dark, controller in hand, staring at the black screen like it might come back. It didn't. Not that night. Not since. But I'll tell you this. Next morning, I went to the garage. Dug through the boxes I hadn't touched in years. Found the old Mustang curing with the tiny eagle on it. Held it tight. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I was trying to outrun a ghost anymore. I'd raced him. I'd faced him. And I'd finally crossed the finish line. You'd think after a ghost race with my dead father, I'd be done with the game. Wrap it up. Uninstall. Maybe go sit in a church pew or find a shrink with a specialty in paranormal trauma. But no. Not me. I'm a mechanic. We don't toss the whole engine when one part starts rattling. We dig deeper. So I booted up the game again. This time, the menu screen was different. No music. Just wind. The kind that whispers through cornfields and abandoned lots. The kind that makes you feel like someone's watching even when no one's there. And a new option had appeared. Rewind the legacy. I hovered over it with the controller, thumb sweating on the stick. Part of me thought I was losing it. Maybe I'd just dreamed the whole thing. A product of whiskey and late nights. But then the room got cold. Not chilly. Cold. Like someone had opened a freezer inside my chest. So I clicked it. The screen glitched. Real quick, like an old VHS tape getting chewed up. Then it went dark. Then, light. Blinding. Flickering. And suddenly, I was in a living room. Not a digital one. Not stylized. But ours. Ours from 1997. Our damn house. I knew it the second I saw the ashtray with the Harley logo on the coffee table. The yellowed wallpaper. The ratty old couch where I used to fall asleep watching VHS tapes of NASCAR highlights while my dad tuned engines in the next room. In the game, my digital avatar, was just standing there, a little awkwardly. And across the room, sitting in that beat-up recliner, was him. Not the race day version of my father. This was the after-work, beer in hand, distant version. The one who never said, "Good job," only, "About time." The one who grunted more than he spoke. The one I tried so hard not to become. He was younger than I remembered him. Not ancient, not ghostly. Just tired. Worn. Like he carried too much weight in his chest and didn't know how to unload it. The camera, again, I had no control over it, panned around, like it was looking for something. And that's when I noticed the detail. The realness. There was a photograph on the mantel that I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Me, age 6, with a plastic helmet on, sitting in the driver's seat of a rusted go-kart. He was standing behind me, one hand on my shoulder. He smiled in that photo. I barely remembered that version of him. Then the screen glitched again. This time, I was in my teenage bedroom. Posters of racing legends on the wall. A cracked Nintendo 64 controller on the floor. And me, 15-year-old Jack, was sitting at the desk, red-faced and trembling. I knew what this was. It was the night we had the fight. The one where I told him I didn't want to race. Didn't want to fix cars. Didn't want to waste my life under a damn hood like him. I'd screamed it, full of teen venom and years of feeling second best to an engine block. And I watched it all play out. Watched my younger self cry after he slammed the door and stormed out. Watched my father sit on the porch, a cigarette in hand, looking like he'd just been shot. Only this time. I heard his voice. A whisper. Not from the speakers. From the headset itself. I didn't know how to be better, kid. Static crackled through the speakers, then another line. I thought if I gave you grit, you'd survive. I didn't know I was making you carry my ghosts. Then the screen faded again. And I was back at the garage. Only this time. I was in his shoes. Not the player. The legacy. The car sitting in the bay was his. The blue Mustang. But it was older now. Faded. The chrome dulled. The hood had a dent I didn't remember. I was supposed to fix it. I knew it instinctively. Just like I knew what wrench to reach for first, what bolts to loosen. It was second nature. And I worked that digital engine like it was a real one, hands moving with muscle memory my real self hadn't used in years. Then the game did something I didn't expect. It let me talk. In the interface, a prompt appeared, "What would you say to him now?" It blinked. Waiting. I sat there, controller in hand, staring at the empty garage. Then I pressed the mic button. And I said, "I never hated you, Dad. I just wanted to hear you say you were proud of me. Just once." The car headlights flashed. And in that moment, dead silence. Then one final prompt appeared on screen. "One race remains." I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes. Maybe 30. The weight of all the words I never said pulling me down. But eventually. I clicked, continue. And the screen faded into black once more. The screen didn't just fade this time, it breathed. I don't know how else to describe it. It pulsed like a slow heartbeat, like the monitor next to a hospital bed, just waiting to flatline or spike. Then came a low hum, the kind you feel in your chest more than your ears. And then, without warning, the black gave way to light. Not the harsh glare of a track. Not the dim memory of an old garage. But something else. A highway. A two-lane road stretching into an endless dusk, sky painted in deep oranges and purples, the sun dipping just enough to cast long shadows but never quite setting. It looked like that stretch between Ottumwa and Fairfield my dad used to cruise when he needed to think without talking. Only this wasn't any real road. There were no signs. No mile markers. Just that horizon. That light. And there were two cars. One was mine. The Viper, still scratched from the last race. The other, the Mustang. But something was different now. It shimmered. Like it was made of light and chrome. Real, but not. Heavy with memory. There was no countdown this time. No revving. No music. Only a voice. His voice. Let's finish it, Jack. I pressed the throttle. And the race began. The Viper surged forward, tires gripping the pavement like talons. But it wasn't a race of speed, not anymore. Every time we hit a bend in the road, the world changed. The first corner took us back to the high school parking lot where I snuck out to teach myself stick shift in his old truck. I saw my teenage self stalling out, panicking, grinding gears like I was shredding metal. And there he was, sitting in a folding chair nearby, shaking his head. Not mad, just quiet. I'd thought he was disappointed. But now, I could see, he was holding back a smile. That weird smile of a man trying not to admit he's proud too soon. Back to the road. We hit the second turn, and we were suddenly inside the hospital room, the night he died. Machines humming. My mother sobbing in the hallway. Me, 17 and too angry to cry, standing by his bed, fists in my hoodie pockets. I remember thinking, say something. Anything. But he didn't. He never did. But now, in the game, he looked at me from that bed and said, clear as day. I didn't know how to say goodbye. The screen shivered. Then we were back on the highway. The race wasn't about winning anymore. It was about unraveling. Every straightaway pulled a thread. Every curve revealed a scar. At one point, I saw a memory I'd buried so deep it hurt to watch, me, 10 years old, crying over a busted toy car, and him crouching down beside me, showing me how to glue it back together. Everything can be fixed, he'd said. Except the things we don't try to. I'd forgotten that moment. Or maybe I didn't want to remember it. We came up on the final stretch. A bridge over nothingness. Beneath it, darkness. Like the void between one life and the next. But above it, the sun. Blazing now. No longer gentle. I gunned it. He matched me. Side by side, the Viper and the Mustang tore across that final mile. I couldn't hear the engines anymore. Just my own heartbeat. And then, the Mustang started to fade. Slowly at first, then faster. Panels vanished. The wheels shimmered. The windshield turned to mist. He was going. And then his voice, one last time. You drive like hell, son. You always did. I whispered, I love you, Dad. And as the Mustang disappeared into light, I swear I heard it, soft and proud. I know. The finish line was a white blaze stretching across the sky. I crossed it alone. But I didn't feel alone anymore. The game shut off. No credits. No high scores. Just silence. I sat there in the dark, controller still warm in my hands, and cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because he was gone. But because, for the first time, I felt like I'd finally met him. Really met him. Not as a ghost. But as a father. The day after that last race, I didn't touch the game. Didn't even turn on the console. Instead, I drove. Not in the Viper. That was just pixels and code. I got in my real car, my '05 Dodge Ram, dent in the passenger door, coffee stains on the dash, and a cassette deck that still worked when you hit it just right. I didn't know where I was going when I left my house. I just knew I needed to move. I drove until the town disappeared behind me, past the strip malls and the water tower, out into the open country. The road stretched flat and long, cutting through fields where the wind turned the grass into waves. Just like when I was a kid riding shotgun in Dad's Mustang, back when he still had the time and I still had the hope. By early afternoon, I found myself pulling off the highway near a faded green sign that read, Miller's Track, 1 mile. I hadn't been there in over 20 years. The old speedway looked like a ghost town built by gasoline. Weeds pushed up through cracks in the asphalt. The grandstands had collapsed in places, like old men bent over with age. The track's perimeter fence sagged under the weight of decades. And yet, it still felt alive. Like it was waiting. I parked by the rusted-out ticket booth and climbed through a hole in the fence. The smell hit me first, sun-baked rubber, oil-soaked soil, and old rain trapped in concrete. I walked the track. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the ghosts of the past were gripping my boots. Then I found it. Turn 4. The spot where my dad made his legendary pass in the '79 Fall Nationals. I remember watching the grainy tape 1,000 times, how he cut inside 2 cars and drifted through the turn like the laws of physics had given him a pass just for that one night. I knelt there. Put my hand on the ground. The sun warmed the cracked asphalt, but beneath it, it felt cold. And I realized, I hadn't come for nostalgia. I came for answers. I pulled out my phone. Opened the voice recording app. It wasn't much, but I had to say something, to someone. Maybe to him. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice scratchy and uncertain. "I don't know how this all works. Don't know if you're still listening. Or if that game was your doing or just my broken brain putting on a show. But it felt real. It was real. And, thank you." I paused, glancing up at the sky. "You were a hard man to understand. Still are. But I think maybe I get it now. Maybe grit was all you had to give. And maybe that was your way of loving." Wind stirred the grass beside the track. A crow cawed in the distance. I kept going. I'm not angry anymore. Just sad we didn't get more laps together. But I guess we raced the ones we had. Then I stood. And I whispered, "Rest easy, old man." As I turned to leave, something shimmered near the fence. A glint of metal caught in the weeds. I walked over, brushed aside the grass, and there it was. A rusted keyring. A small silver eagle charm attached. Just like the one he used to keep his garage keys on. I swear on everything I've got, I'd never been there before. Never dropped it. And yet, there it was. Waiting. I picked it up. Clutched it in my hand. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from his shadow. I felt like I was carrying his legacy. Not the trophies. Not the grudges. But the drive. I left the track at dusk, the sky behind me smudged with purple and fire. On the way home, I stopped by the junkyard and asked if they still had that old '67 Mustang shell I'd seen 6 months back. They did. I bought it on the spot. Because I had a plan now. I was going to rebuild it. Piece by piece. Not to be him. But to remember him. The man who taught me, in life and in death, that you don't get to choose your starting line, but damn it, you can choose how you drive the race. They dropped the Mustang off the next day. The junkyard guy, Rico, old-timer with a walrus mustache and a laugh like a chainsaw, helped me back it into the garage. He leaned on the doorframe after we got it inside and gave me a look. "You sure you want this rust bucket?" he asked. "Looks like she lost every race and then got hit by the pace car for good measure." I grinned. "Yeah," I said. "But I've seen worse make it back to life." Rico just nodded like he'd heard that line before and left me to it. And then it was just me. And the car. And the ghosts. The Mustang was a '67 fastback, same year, same model, same everything as Dad's. But it was stripped to hell, no seats, no engine, no dash. A bare-bones carcass on 4 tired wheels. Still, it felt right. Like it was waiting for someone to believe in it again. That night, I cracked a beer, turned on an old radio in the corner of the shop, and got to work. First step was clearing it out. I started pulling panels, checking the frame, inspecting weld points for rust cancer. All while the radio played rock ballads from a time when my old man had hair on his head and gas cost $1. Funny thing happened as I worked. I started hearing him. Not in a spooky way. Not like the game. Just, in my head. In my hands. Little things. Always tag your bolts. Don't toss M in a coffee can like a rookie. Double check the jack stand before you crawl under, boy. You want to walk away from this hobby. Ratchet's not a hammer, Jack. Don't use it like one. And every time I heard him, I'd pause, glance around the garage like maybe I'd see his reflection in the window. Never did. But it didn't matter. He was there. Not haunting me. Helping me. A few weeks passed. I got the chassis cleaned up, patched the frame, and started hunting parts. Found a rebuilt 289 V8 out in Council Bluffs. Guy named Ronnie sold it to me for half price when I told him what I was doing. "Doin' your dad proud," he said, nodding. "Ain't many sons still build their fathers anymore." I didn't have a response to that, so I just shook his hand and loaded up the engine. Back at the garage, I mounted the block onto the stand and started piecing it together. Pistons, rods, crankshaft, every part a memory. Every bolt a stitch in a wound that had been open for 2 decades. One night, as I was sanding down the hood, hands raw, shirt soaked with sweat, I stopped to take a breath and looked around the shop. It had changed. Not just the car. Everything. The old tool chest was back where Dad used to keep it. The "Rust Never Sleeps" sign was rehung above the workbench. There was even a coffee cup on the counter, chipped, stained, and familiar. Like the garage remembered him, too. I didn't sleep much those days. Didn't need to. There was something electric in me, something I hadn't felt in years. A purpose. Not just to fix the Mustang, but to honor it. To turn memory into momentum. By month's end, she was standing tall. Primered gray, chrome gleaming, engine purring like a lion waking from hibernation. I slid behind the wheel one night and just sat there. Hand on the wheel. Eyes closed. And I swear. The radio crackled. Then a voice. His voice. "Good job, kid." Soft. Like wind through the trees. Like pride that didn't need to shout. I opened my eyes. The garage was empty. But I smiled. Because I knew what was next. The race wasn't over. The Mustang was alive. She still wore her primer gray coat like a battle-scarred jacket, but beneath the hood, that 289 V8 roared like a war drum. When I turned the key that first time and felt the rumble come alive beneath my feet, I swear it rattled something loose in my chest. A grief. A guilt. Maybe even a grudge. Whatever it was, it didn't stick around long. Because the second that engine kicked, all I could think about was the road. And the ghost that might still be waiting on it. I took her out at dawn. No plates. No papers. Just me and her and the wide Iowa sky. The air still held that morning chill, the kind that slips past your collar and makes you feel alive. The roads were empty, long stretches of blacktop unrolling like ribbon. I didn't have a destination. Didn't need one. I just wanted to drive. I cruised past cornfields, rusted barns, and ghost towns with names like Bell Hollow and Whispering Pines. Places I hadn't seen since I was too young to know what heartbreak was, and too proud to think it could ever reach me. The Mustang handled like a dream. Tight in the turns, responsive in the straights, and loud in all the ways that mattered. She wasn't just rebuilt. She was reborn. And I wasn't just driving. I was remembering. About an hour out, I passed a faded road sign that read Cedar Run, 5 miles. I hadn't thought about that place in years. Not since the night Dad took me there, right after Mom kicked him out for the 3rd time. He didn't say much that night. We just sat on the hood of the car, parked by the old quarry, looking out over the water. He handed me a Coke and lit a cigarette and said, "Not every man knows how to love the right way. Some of us just keep trying." That was it. That was the closest he ever came to an apology. And standing there again now, all these years later, engine ticking as it cooled behind me, I whispered back, "I get it now, old man." Back on the road, something strange happened. The radio kicked on by itself. Now mind you, this wasn't a modern head unit. This was the old AM/FM analog radio that came with the Mustang. I hadn't even wired it yet. But the dial clicked over. Static at first. Then music. Running on Empty by Jackson Browne. And I laughed. Out loud. Nearly had to pull over. Because of course he'd picked that one. It was the same song he played on repeat the week his buddy Hank crashed at the fairgrounds track. He said it was "Erasers" him, and used to belt it out while under the car like a man possessed. I let it play. Didn't question it. Because by then, I'd stopped needing answers. I just needed the ride. I ended the day parked on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River. The sun was melting into the horizon like butter on a hot skillet. I killed the engine, stepped out, and leaned against the warm metal of the hood. And for a second. Just a second. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Not weight. Not pressure. Just presence. I didn't turn. Didn't speak. I just nodded. Because there are some moments you don't ruin with noise. There are some moments that are the goodbye you never got. As night fell, I climbed back into the Mustang. And I whispered, "Thanks for riding with me." The engine hummed like it heard. 2 days later, I got a letter. Yeah, a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An honest-to-God stamped envelope, yellowed like it had sat in someone's drawer too long. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in a hand I hadn't seen in years. Inside was a note. One line. "If you're gonna run, at least know where the finish line is. GM." And a folded photograph. Me and Dad, at the county fair racetrack. I was maybe 11, missing a front tooth, holding a grease-streaked funnel like it was a trophy. He was crouched beside me, mid-laugh, like he'd just told a joke only I would ever understand. I flipped it over. On the back, in faded ink, were 4 words. Last pit, Dry Creek. My heart skipped. Dry Creek wasn't a town. It was a shop. The last place we worked together before he passed. Back then, Dry Creek Auto was nothing special. A 2-bay garage outside a one-light town. No sign out front, just a rusted hand-painted board nailed to a telephone pole. The kind of place where you paid in cash and got your change in quarters and wisdom. Dad worked there for 6 months after leaving his job at the steel mill. Said he was getting back to what he knew. I spent that summer sweeping floors, fetching wrenches, and getting yelled at for touching the carburetors. But something happened there. Something shifted. He wasn't the same man in Dry Creek. He laughed more. Swore less. He let me tune the radio once in a while, even taught me how to gap a spark plug properly. It was like, for the first time, he let me in. And then he was gone. Heart attack behind the counter, right in the middle of a parts order. The shop shut down a month later. I hadn't been back since. It took me 4 hours to get there. The Mustang hummed along the back roads like she knew the way. As I rolled into Dry Creek, not much had changed. The same grain elevator stood watch like a lonely lighthouse. Same gas station with pumps older than the war. Even the air smelled the same, diesel, hay, and burnt coffee. The shop sat on the edge of town. Abandoned, but not forgotten. The windows were boarded up, but the front door creaked open when I touched it. Inside, dust hung in the air like smoke. Cobwebs clung to corners. The workbenches were bare, but the outlines of old tools still stained the wood, like shadows that didn't want to leave. I walked in slow, like I was stepping into a church. And then I saw it. The locker. His locker. Still bolted shut. Still dented where he used to slam it closed when he was mad at the world. I kneeled down. And there, wedged behind it in the corner, was a cardboard box. Inside? His journal. Not the kind of leather-bound thing you see in movies. Just a ratty old composition notebook with a busted spine. I opened it slowly, pages brittle from time and oil. The first page was dated 3 weeks before he died. If something happens to me, and Jack finds this, I want him to know I was trying. My breath hitched. I sat on the floor. And I read. Page after page, he'd written about me. Not racing records. Not part numbers. Me. How he didn't know how to connect. How he thought being hard would make me strong. How he regretted the silences, the slammed doors, the things he never said. And one entry, circled, underlined 3 times, stuck with me. I want to race with him again. For real. Not just on the track. I want to show him how to drive forward without fear. But I'm running out of time. He knew. Some part of him knew he was fading. And he'd tried, God, he'd tried, to leave something behind. Not just a car. Not just a legacy. Connection. I sat there until the sun sank behind the hills, the Mustang casting long shadows through the busted windows. Then I stood, clutching that journal like a lifeline. And I whispered, "You made it to the finish line, Dad." But me? I wasn't done driving. I left Dry Creek with the journal riding shotgun, seatbelt buckled across it like it was still part of him. The Mustang's engine growled low, like it understood the gravity of the moment, like it was humming a hymn for the man who built it in spirit and left the rest to me. I didn't drive home. I headed for Miller's track. One last time. The sun was setting by the time I pulled up. The track hadn't changed in the weeks since I'd first returned, it was still cracked, forgotten, surrendered to time. But tonight? It felt different. Charged. Like the past had finally caught up with me, not to haunt, but to hand me the keys. I parked the Mustang right on the starting line, wheels perfectly aligned with the faded chalk that hadn't been touched since 1999. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, heart thudding against my ribs like a starter pistol waiting to fire. Then I saw it. Headlights. Faint, like fog. But there. A second car. The cobalt blue Mustang with the white stripes. Just like before. Just like the game. It rolled up beside me, tires making no sound, engine rumbling low and steady. I didn't need to see a driver. I knew. He was here. And this time, it wasn't code. It was him. I gripped the wheel. Nodded once. The ghost car did the same, lights flickering in rhythm, like an old man tipping his cap before a showdown. No countdown. No HUD. Just two Mustangs. Father and son. And a track older than our grudges. I punched the throttle. And we were off. The world melted away. There were no stands. No fence. No night sky. Just turns and wind and memory. And him. He didn't race to win. He raced to push me. To show me. Every turn he took perfectly, tight and efficient. But every so often, he'd ease up. Let me lead. Let me feel the race instead of fight it. That was his final lesson. Not how to drive. But how to let go. On the last lap, just before the final bend, I looked over. And the driver's seat of his Mustang was empty. No figure. No face. Just the wheel. Turning itself. Guiding itself. But not haunted. Released. I hit the final straight. The V8 screamed. The wind peeled the grief off my skin like old paint. And as I crossed the finish line, the ghost car beside me shimmered once, then faded, trailing sparks like fireflies into the sky. Gone. But not lost. Never lost. I parked near the old announcer's booth, heart pounding, sweat on my brow, and tears I didn't bother to hide. I stepped out, walked into the center of the track, and pulled something from my back pocket. The keyring. With the silver eagle. I knelt down and buried it in the dirt near turn 4. No marker. No words. Just presence. Then I stood. And I felt it. Wind at my back. Sun setting ahead. And peace. The kind that comes only when the race is finally done. A month passed. The Mustang sat under a canvas tarp out behind the garage. I didn't drive her much after that night at Miller's. Not because I didn't want to, but because she felt complete now. Like some stories aren't meant to be told again and again. Just once. Pure. Final. But I wasn't done with the road. I was just learning to walk it without chasing ghosts. I started volunteering at a youth auto shop out on the edge of town, kids from rougher neighborhoods, the kind that grow up fast and trust slow. I showed them how to strip a carburetor, how to rewire a harness, how to listen for engine knock with their eyes closed. They listened. Not because I was wise. But because I talked to them like my dad should have talked to me. One afternoon, a kid named Leo, quiet, maybe 16, asked why I always wore that worn leather glove on my right hand when we worked. I just smiled and said, it was my old man's. He left it behind when he passed. Leo looked at me and said, he must have been proud of you. And man. I nearly had to step outside for air. At home, the game console sat unplugged. I never turned it on again. I didn't need to. What I got from that game, that 1 in a million glitch or miracle or whatever you want to call it, wasn't for repeating. It was a message. A race. A redemption. It taught me that closure doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it comes in the way your tires grip a familiar turn. In the silence between gear shifts. In the echo of a father's voice that finally, sounds like love. I still see him sometimes. Not in dreams. Not in mirrors. But in the little things. The way my hands move when I'm rebuilding a carb. The way I whistle the theme from Bullet when I'm sanding primer. The way I glance at the sky before starting a long drive, like I'm waiting for a sign. And sometimes, I swear, the radio crackles just for a second. Just long enough for a song to start. Just long enough to feel him riding shotgun again. One last thing. I took the journal, the one I found in Dry Creek, and placed it in the glove box of the Mustang. Locked it up. Left a note taped to the inside of the hood. It reads. This car runs on more than gas. It runs on forgiveness, memory, and one hell of a final lap. If you're reading this, maybe you've got a race to finish too. Jack. Because legacies? They don't live in trophies. They live in hands calloused by work. In engines tuned with care. In races that never make the news but change you all the same. And in sons who learn, eventually, to drive forward without fear.